unaware that the CEO was observing her every move in that marble foyer, where corporate hypocrisy was more evident than the waxed floor. A black woman, in turn, used sign language to greet a deaf guest. The receptionist remarked, "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't understand what you're trying to tell me," in that tone of well-masked annoyance that affluent people adopt whenever they run into any disruption in their flawless routines. Her hands danced in the air as the man in the dapper suit made frantic gestures in a language that nobody around seemed to comprehend. The familiar weight of exclusion started to sag his shoulders. He was all too familiar with that muted defeat. As she balanced a tray of pricey coffees for businessmen who hardly recognized her name, 24-year-old Jasmine Williams observed the scene from the other side of the lobby. She had only needed 3 months as an intern at the esteemed Reynolds Corporation to grasp the workings of that industry. Superficial politeness, fake smiles, and a zero-tolerance policy for anything that interfered with the corporate machine's operation. But something inside of her refused to put up with yet another injustice under the pretext of professional protocol when she witnessed that man being treated like an inconvenience. Before his mind could consider the potential outcomes, his feet began to move. With the smooth elegance of someone who has spent years honing every move, he walked up to the counter, put down the tray, and lifted his hands. He used his hands to make the words, "Hello, sir, can I help you?" that his voice was unable to express. His face brightened as though a light had been switched on in a pitch-black room. "Thank you. I thought no one here would understand me," he said, the relief in his motions evident. The lobby came to a halt. Footsteps paused, conversation stopped, and everyone's attention was drawn to this unexpected scene. A guest who the receptionist had written off as a problem was having a conversation with a black intern who was fluent in sign language. Jasmine was unaware that the CEO of the firm, Lawrence Reynolds, had just exited the executive lift and was watching the entire exchange. Known for taking down seasoned executives with a single look, his grey eyes now observed with a new intensity, as though he were witnessing something he had long desired without realizing it. However, neither Lawrence nor Jasmine could have foreseen that this small act of humanity would soon incite the wrath of someone who saw any act of generosity as a direct challenge to her own mediocrity. Victoria Sterling, the marketing department supervisor across the lobby, watched the scenario with the kind of rage that only insecure people get when they see true competence. His eyes furrowed as he planned just how to make this act of kindness into a public education on self. Victoria was unaware that someone who had the ability to totally alter the conclusion of this tale would recall every hurtful word she was going to say with photographic accuracy. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to learn how a small act of kindness can uncover people's excited true selves and start a series of events that no one could have foreseen. The events that transpired in the following minutes would alter the course of history for everyone involved. Wow, what a heartwarming scene. Like a blade, Victoria's piercing voice sliced through the foyer, resonating off the marble so that everyone could hear it clearly, and acting as a professional interpreter. How cute. The blood in Jasmine's veins froze. She caught the attention of everyone in the foyer, even the executives who had not previously been aware of her presence. With deliberate steps, Victoria Sterling came closer, her heels resonating like a countdown to shame in front of the public. "Sorry to interrupt this performance," Victoria went on, her words brimming with irony. The deaf man became perplexed by the two women. "But we have protocols in this company. Interns do not interpret for clients. That's what certified professionals are for." Even without hearing the hateful comments, obviously feeling the tension, Jasmine translated right away. "I'm sorry, sir. It appears that I went too far." "That's right." Victoria gave a chilly smile. "Isn't it, Jasmine? After 3 months, you already feel indispensable." How audacious. Her use of the word ambitious sounded insulting. Lawrence Reynolds remained still close to the lifts, taking in every detail of that exchange. His seasoned eyes, which were adept at reading people, caught every small gesture, voice inflection, every instance of character being displayed under duress. Jasmine, Signora Victoria, made an effort to speak steadily. "I was only assisting, He had to have what he needed. Victoria rudely cut him off. Was not an intern who chose to flaunt themselves in order to attract attention, but rather a qualified professional. Do you think anyone here will be impressed by a few hand gestures? The receptionist, obviously thrilled to see someone else humiliated for failing to handle a situation she created, gave a subtle smile. Attracted to the public drama, like flies to the honey of another person's suffering, other colleagues started to congregate. After taking a big breath, Jasmine's eyes altered. Victoria may have realized for a moment that the humiliation was not breaking this young woman. She was shaping herself. Jasmine's voice took on an unexpected calmness as she said, "I understand your concern." She didn't mean to stir things up. What was she trying to do? Victoria let out a big laugh. "You're a 3-month intern, honey. It doesn't matter what his motives are. Until he gains the right to voice his ideas, his duty is to make copies, bring coffee, and learn to remain invisible." A person who is deaf approached her gently and signaled, "You don't have to apologize for being kind. Thank you for your help." When Jasmine translated his words to the audience, something interesting happened. Some faces showed genuine discomfort with Victoria's unnecessary cruelty. But Victoria didn't notice. She was too busy savoring his moment of power. How dramatic. Victoria rolled her eyes. "Jasmine, you have work to do. I suggest you return to her actual responsibilities and leave professional matters to those who really understand the subject." That's when Jasmine did something no one expected. Instead of cowering or running away, she turned to his deaf man and signaled with fluid, elegant gestures, "Sir, it was an honor to help you. I hope this company has exactly what you're looking for." The fluidity and naturalness of his movements made even Victoria stop talking for a moment. These weren't the clumsy gestures of someone who had memorized a few phrases. It was the fluent communication of someone who truly mastered that language. A man smiled and replied in sign language, his gestures quick and expressive. Jasmine laughed, a genuine warm laugh before interpreting. He said he rarely meets someone who communicates so naturally and that he has a meeting scheduled with the CEO about an accessibility project. The silence in the lobby became almost palpable. Victoria blinked several times, slowly processing that this was not just any visitor, but someone important enough to have a direct meeting with Lawrence Reynolds. Well, Victoria tried to regain control of the situation. "I'm sure Mr. Reynolds will arrange for a suitable interpreter for her meeting." Actually, a deep voice cut through the tension like an axe. "I believe I've already found the perfect interpreter." Everyone turned to see Lawrence Reynolds approaching the group, her presence filling the space like a magnetic field. Victoria paused instantly. How much of that conversation had the CEO witnessed? "Mr. Reynolds," Victoria stammered, "I was just explaining the company protocols for publicly humiliating an employee who has demonstrated exceptional competence and genuine kindness." Lawrence asked, his voice calm but laden with an authority that made Victoria take a step back. Jasmine remained motionless, but her eyes met Lawrence's for a brief moment. Lawrence continued without removing his eyes from Victoria. "Join me and Mr. Martinez for the meeting." He saw something in that gaze that reminded him of his own daughter. The same calm tenacity, the same reluctance to allow herself be broken by petty individuals in temporary positions of power. "You seem to be the ideal candidate for this project." As the three headed for the elevators, Lawrence added casually, but loud enough for the entire lobby to hear, "Victoria, see you in my office in an hour. We have a lot to talk about regarding leadership and protocols." Jasmine stepped into the elevator, still processing what had just happened. But a part of her, a part that Victoria had completely underestimated, wasn't surprised at all. Because sometimes when you grow up being underestimated because of his color, his gender, his background, you develop a special intuition. You learn to identify who really has power and who just pretends to. And you learn to wait for the right moment. What Victoria Sterling didn't know was that Jasmine Williams hadn't learned sign language by accident. Nor had she developed that serenity under pressure for no reason. And she definitely didn't know that the young intern she had just tried to humiliate had spent the last few years caring for a deaf younger brother, facing exactly this kind of prejudice and discrimination every day. As the elevator doors closed, Jasmine allowed herself a small but meaningful smile. Victoria had made the classic mistake of insecure people, attacking someone without first finding out who he was really up against. And that, as she would soon discover, had been a very, very costly mistake. The meeting in Lawrence Reynolds' office lasted 2 hours and completely changed Jasmine's perspective on that company. Mr. Martinez wasn't just any visitor. He was Diego Martinez, founder of the largest corporate accessibility organization in the country, evaluating Reynolds Corporation for $1 million partnership. Her interpretation was exceptional. Diego signaled to Jasmine while Lawrence watched intently. More significantly though, you comprehended her intents as well as her words. Jasmine had translated correctly, but she was digesting a startling realization on the inside. That's rare. Lawrence Reynolds was able to follow simple discussions in sign language, despite his lack of fluency. Every word spoken in the lobby, including Victoria's insults, had made sense to him. Mr. Martinez is correct, Lawrence responded, looking directly into his eyes. Having a sister with this level of communicative proficiency must make his brother quite proud. Jasmine paused her interpretation. How was he aware of Danny? Lawrence half smiled as he explained. I did a quick search. The deaf school's basketball team captain is 17-year-old Danny Williams. Full scholarship in graphic design. To provide for the family, both of his parents work 2 jobs. How about you? In order to support your family, you take a part-time job at a restaurant, in addition to your internship here. The most powerful CEO of the organization was suddenly aware of the weakness that Jasmine had meticulously concealed for months. However, she saw something distinct in Lawrence's eyes rather than embarrassment. Sincere regard, I have something to tell you, Diego. That's why this project is so important to me, Lawrence added. Because it's not just about compliance or corporate image. It's about creating an environment where people like Sarah, like Danny, never feel invisible or overlooked. My daughter was deaf. Sarah passed away in an accident 3 years ago. But she taught her the basics of sign language before her voice faltered briefly. She always said that people who truly understand communication don't just translate words. They translate souls. The office was silent except for the discreet sound of Jasmine translating Lawrence's words for Diego, who nodded sympathetically. As a senior consultant, not as an intern, would you agree to lead the implementation of the company's accessibility program? He asked. Senior consultant, Jasmine whispered, hardly believing what she was saying. With a corresponding salary, your own office, and the autonomy to hire a team, Lawrence added. What do you say? Victoria Sterling frantically pounded away at her keyboard 3 floors below, writing emails to every powerful individual she knew in the company. While Jasmine pondered the enormity of that offer, she had a straightforward plan. Before Jasmine could solidify any position, destroy her credibility, she typed to the executive board, her fingers shaking with anger. Subject: unlawful favoritism of underqualified employees raises concerns. Victoria had made the decision to destroy Jasmine through an internal political conflict if she couldn't break her with public humiliation. She was unaware that Lawrence Reynolds had foreseen that exact response. Jasmine Lawrence said as she was still absorbing the proposal, I need to warn you about something. Victoria will likely try to sabotage you in the coming days. She's not the type of person to accept losing prestige quietly. What do you mean, Mr. Reynolds? She will send emails questioning your qualifications, spread rumors about favoritism, possibly even try to create embarrassing situations for you publicly. It's her standard behavior when she feels threatened. Diego interrupted with a pointed question that made Jasmine smile for the first time in that conversation. He wants to know if you are prepared for a war and if you have your own strategies. Jasmine took a deep breath before answering, and something in his tone of voice changed completely. A calculated coldness that neither Lawrence nor Diego expected to hear. Mr. Reynolds, Mr. Martinez, you assume that I am just an innocent victim in this situation, and for 3 months, I let everyone think exactly that. She stopped acting for a moment, making direct eye contact with Lawrence. Do you think a young black woman from the suburbs can survive 3 months in a toxic corporate environment like this without developing some defensive skills? Lawrence raised an eyebrow, clearly interested. Continue. Victoria has been sending derogatory emails about me to colleagues for 2 months. She documents every hostile interaction in intimate detail. She talks about inadequate interns who should know his place in conversations she thinks are private. Jasmine paused to let the information sink in. I recorded everything. The silence in the office became palpable. Diego leaned forward, clearly impressed by the revelation. Why? Lawrence asked simply. Because when you grow up being systematically underestimated, you learn that documentation is her only protection. Danny taught me that. He records all interactions with teachers who show prejudice against deaf students. Evidence, he always points out, is more powerful than outrage. Jasmine opened her purse and took out a small digital recorder. I have 47 hours of recorded conversations, including comments about interns who don't know his place. Discussions about how people like her, she, are hired only for superficial diversity. And at least 8 instances of Victoria instructing other employees to ignore my requests for help or information. Lawrence and Diego exchanged a look that mixed surprise with genuine admiration. Victoria makes the classic mistake of privileged people, Jasmine continued, her voice maintaining that icy serenity. She assumes that people like me are too naive or intimidated to defend themselves properly. She speaks freely because she believes her position protects her from any consequences. And how do you intend to use these recordings? Lawrence questioned, even though he anticipated the response. Although I haven't made up my mind yet, Victoria has 72 hours to demonstrate her true character. He will discover that he has greatly underestimated the person he is dealing with if he decides to escalate. There's one more thing, Jasmine said, a tiny but significant smile crossing her lips. Victoria doesn't know that I speak 3 languages fluently, including Spanish. Diego gave a slow clap, his movements expressing complete agreement of the tactic. Assuming no one around her knew what she was saying, she has had a number of fascinating chats with Hispanic suppliers. Leaning back in her chair, Lawrence considered the young woman's intricacy, which he had totally underestimated. Do you accept our offer, Jasmine? I agree, but with a requirement. What is it? I want the freedom to handle Victoria Sterling any way I see proper. No micromanagement, no meddling. She decides whether this will finish amicably or as a lesson that the entire business will remember. Lawrence Reynolds's smile at that very time was the same one that had created a business empire. As the hiring documents were being prepared, none of the 3 realized that Victoria had chosen to expedite her own plans. This was done in recognition of her strategic mind meeting another Diego Lawrence, who said, I believe we have found exactly the right person to revolutionize our approach to corporate communications. She was submitting an exclusive piece regarding racial favoritism at Reynolds Corporation to the city's top corporate newspaper at the time. Victoria Sterling had no idea that her stated battle on air would soon become the most thorough and well-documented public damage she had ever seen. One that the business world had not seen in decades. She would make the grave error of underestimating not only Jasmine Williams, but also the calm strength of someone who had mastered the art of planning her battles long before she engaged in them, and it would all start in less than 24 hours. The following morning, the bomb detonated in a manner Victoria Sterling could not have imagined. She was certain that her behind-the-scenes battle had damaged Jasmine's credibility. So she had convened an urgent executive board meeting to reveal improper hiring practices. Gentlemen, with the bitter look of someone who thinks they have all the cards, Victoria started her presentation. I've called you in to talk about a significant instance of partiality that puts our company's reputation in danger. With the patience of a predator waiting for the ideal opportunity, Lawrence sat quietly at the head of the table and observed Victoria. Victoria was clearly gritting her teeth at the presence of Jasmine, a recently appointed senior consultant. In less than 24 hours, the individual Victoria pointed at Jasmine without even meeting her gaze was elevated from intern to senior consultant, only on the basis of qualifications and experience. On what basis? Victoria? Lawrence cut in, her voice piercing the atmosphere like a knife. Victoria paused for a while, only to discover too late that she had been duped. Clearly, there is partiality. We are all aware that some hiring decisions are made based on quotas rather than qualifications. There was a noticeable hush in the room. A few board members looked at each other uncomfortably. Calmly, interesting. Jasmine turned on a tiny recorder in the middle of the table. Victoria, would it be okay if we replayed some of his discussions regarding quotas and merit? Victoria's face turned pale at once. That's illegal. You can't. Lauren actually gave a chilly smile. When recordings demonstrating systemic prejudice are made in public spaces within the organization, they are completely legal. Through the speakers in the room came Victoria's voice. Every one of these diversity interns is the same. Employed to meet quotas. Despite their lack of knowledge, they believe they should be promoted. The faces at the table gradually became harder. Victoria reached for the switch, but Jasmine moved her hand away gently. We have more. Jasmine went on with cold composure. Do you recall this discussion about folks like me that you had with Sarah from HR Victoria? Fresh recording. Individuals like her must learn to respect others. An intern, especially one who comes from you know where, is an intern regardless of how many kind gestures she makes. Victoria's voice rose an octave as she suddenly stood up. That's not relevant. Jasmine reiterated calmly. You're misrepresenting the situation. You're correct. Let's provide all the details. A comprehensive spreadsheet appeared on the conference room screen. 2 months and 47 hours of recordings. 23 racial discriminating remarks. 31 disparaging remarks about those who are out of place. As well as my favorite, a fresh tape. Victoria and her co-workers were giggling about the promotion of the little black cleaning lady to coffee maker. Victoria stumbled. I never, yet his own words contradicted her. Lawrence gently stood up, her dominance radiating through the room. I have been managing this organization for 20 years, and I have never seen such a systematic manifestation of bigotry and poison. You can't believe her, Lawrence? It's a prelude. What is she? Exactly at that moment, Diego Martinez came in with a camera and 2 reporters. I apologize for interrupting, but I felt it was crucial to record the Reynolds Corporation discrimination conversation for our corporate accessibility initiative. Victoria knew right away that she had stepped into the ideal trap. Her career was not only ruined, but it was also live-streamed to the nation's biggest corporate inclusion initiative. Sterling, Victoria. Every statement was delivered by Lawrence with surgical accuracy. You have been fired for good reason. You will be escorted by security to clear your desk. And he stopped, looking at Victoria one last time. I strongly advise you to get legal advice. Jasmine has enough proof to file a discrimination complaint, which would eliminate her chances of ever working in corporate communications again. Jasmine sat quietly as Victoria was led away, her protests reverberating down the corridor. His expression was one of quiet contentment at having carried out justice with surgical precision, not of petty victory. Diego gave a slow applause. Impressive. You documented systematic discrimination, exposed corporate toxicity, and turned her own humiliation into the ultimate downfall of those who attacked her. Lawrence gave a sincere nod of admiration. Jasmine, you just taught our entire industry how to use strategic knowledge to fight discrimination. The true twist, however, was not yet revealed since Victoria. Sterling was unaware that Jasmine had forwarded copies of every video to the city's top corporate newspaper, the same publication Victoria had. Called to reveal the purported partiality. In addition to ruining Victoria, the headline in the afternoon edition would set a bad example. For all toxic executives who undervalued individuals who were different, due to systematic prejudice, the executive was sacked. 2 months of racist remarks at a large firm were exposed via recordings. Before Victoria even realized she was up against someone far more prepared, clever, and knowledgeable than her conceit had permitted her to perceive, the battle had ended. The headline that demolished Victoria Sterling was still a sobering reminder in the business world 6 months later. A former executive loses everything in a multi-million-dollar legal battle after suing for systematic discrimination. Victoria had made a valiant attempt to salvage her profession. But she soon learnt that there are no second chances when one's reputation has been ruined by indisputable proof. A person whose discriminatory records had been used as a case study in business ethics classes would never be hired by a respectable company. He sold his luxury apartment to fund legal fees. As soon as her toxic behavior was made known, his prestigious social circle dispersed. As if she were radioactive, her business contacts cut her off. Jasmine Williams, meanwhile, was now the nation's most sought-after accessibility specialist. At Reynolds Corporation, his department had grown into a whole division, bringing in millions of dollars in contracts and establishing the business as a leader in corporate inclusion across the country. During the quarterly board meeting, Jasmine Lawrence reported that his division had boosted our revenue by 340% so far this year. More significantly, our company culture has undergone a radical transformation. The 18-year-old Dani frequently visited her sister's office, which has a panoramic view of the city and a gold plaque on the door that reads, Jasmine Williams, Executive Director of Accessibility and Inclusion. Diego Martinez, who is now an official partner in a nationwide project, proudly noted, "You didn't just create a program, you created a movement. Companies across the country are copying his model. Remember when I told you that he would see one day?" Dani smiled broadly and gestured. "You not only demonstrated your value, but you also reinterpreted what value is." Jasmine's metamorphosis went beyond titles and numbers. At business conferences, she had established herself as a national voice. Universities competed for her speaking engagements after her TEDx lectures on transforming discrimination into opportunity received millions of views. After years of excellent service, Mr. Parker was promoted to security coordinator and watched the lobby every day where it all started. "Miss Jasmine changed this company," he would say to new hires. But more than that, she proved that strategic kindness is more powerful than mindless cruelty. Rins Corporation had become a national benchmark. Jasmine's accessibility program was studied at Harvard. His inclusion protocols were adopted by Fortune 500 corporations, and the company received international awards for social responsibility. Victoria, meanwhile, had moved to a small town where no one knew his story. She worked at a local accounting firm for a salary that barely covered the rent on a modest apartment. A dizzying fall for someone who had once commanded entire departments. Occasionally, Victoria would search for Jasmine's name online and find new evidence of his meteoric success. Another award, another accolade, another headline celebrating the woman she had tried to destroy. What knotted Victoria most was not just her own downfall. It was the belated realization that Jasmine had always been exactly what she claimed to be. Genuinely talented, strategically brilliant, and morally superior. Her attempt at humiliation had only revealed her own mediocrity. Lawrence Reynolds, transformed by the experience, had instituted the Sarah program named in honor of her daughter, offering full scholarships to young people from marginalized communities interested in communication and accessibility. Jasmine personally oversaw each application. "Do you know what I've learned?" Lawrence said to Jasmine during a private conversation. "My daughter did not die in vain if her story helped me recognize genuine talent when I finally found it." The company had become a magnet for diverse talent. Not because of quotas or external pressures, but because Jasmine had proven that real inclusion generates extraordinary results. Professionals from all backgrounds competed for positions in a corporation that truly valued merit combined with character. Dani graduated as the top student in her class in graphic design and was immediately hired by Reynolds' marketing division. On his first day at work, he signaled to Jasmine, "Now we're officially co-workers." Jasmine's revenge had transcended personal punishment. It had become a systemic revolution. She hadn't just taken down a toxic person. She had built a model of how organizations can thrive when they genuinely embrace diversity. Victoria Sterling had tried to reduce Jasmine to stereotypes and limitations. In response, Jasmine had become a transformative force that redefined entire industry standards. The inappropriate intern now led changes that impacted thousands of lives. The lesson was crystal clear. When you try to destroy someone out of prejudice, you're not only revealing his own flawed character, You are potentially creating the catalyst for her own replacement by someone infinitely better. Jasmine Williams proved that the best revenge is not to repay cruelty with cruelty, but to turn discrimination into fuel for such absolute success that it renders any future attempts at minimization irrelevant. If this story of transformation and justice touched his heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that our origins never define our destiny. Only his determination to turn obstacles into extraordinary opportunities.